Chairman Mao, Jamie Howe, Ho Chi Minh, Asif Din, Václav Havel, Graham Saville, No Surrender, Percy Fender, Guerilla Cricket.
Botham, Richards, Garner, Trescothik, Caddick, Gimlett, White, Bess, Leach, Rogers, Close, Gayle, Azam. Just a few names that have graced the county ground in Taunton and the home of Somerset, a beautiful ground in the southwest of England, and a reputation over many years for playing a dashing and exciting brand of cricket since, well, before anyone would have used the phrase brand of cricket. Since 1875, in fact, they've been delighting a passionate and loyal base of members and fans. Yet when England get battered in a test, there are those who point an accusing finger towards our first-class county game. Some even question the status of counties at all. Today, my guest is the CEO of Somerset, Gordon Hollins, who is looking to steer Somerset to growth and success on and off the field. Gordon, a very, very warm welcome to Guerilla Cricket.
Thanks, Tony. I'm very pleased to be here.
Well, delighted to have you. Well, let's start, if we may, with finding out just a little bit about you. You've been steering the direction of the game itself with the ECB, and then you've kind of zoomed in to one of its 18 counties. Tell us a wee bit about that journey.
I think they call it Gamekeeper turned poacher, don't they? Is that the right way around?
I'm glad you used that phrase. I nearly wrote it in my question.
Hey, Luke. I started my life in cricket 20 years ago, 21 years ago nearly, as commercial manager at Durham. All those years ago, great club. Great to see them bouncing back now after a really difficult few years. And I then went to ECB in 2007 in various roles, looking after some venues. And then for the vast majority of the time, I was the conduit between the ECB and the first-class counties and the broader and the national counties and the county boards too for a long time, which was great fun. Learned a huge amount doing that job, as you can imagine. I got to know every county inside out and upside down and sideways. And I really wanted before, as part of my career, to put in practice the best practice that I'd seen around the country, really, because I found that in that job that there were a lot of really good practice, but it tended to be in pockets rather than universal. So I've tried to steal. The plan was to try and steal as much of it as possible and replicate it all in Somerset, which really appealed to me in that Somerset is the only county in the country where cricket's the biggest sport, and that's something that's critically important. It's so relevant. You walk through Taunton and you see the ring of bells with stumps in it. You see the Wickets Cafe. You see the Cricketers' Arms.
I've done that walk.
You see lots of relevance, and it's very, very rare, if not unique, in this country that cricket is so relevant, which means you've got a chance of being successful if you're relevant. If you're not relevant, you've got a problem. So that's why Somerset appealed, and that's how I ended up where I am. What I didn't bargain for was starting 1 week before the country went into lockdown, which is what I did. 16th of March I started in 2020, and then the country went into lockdown for a long period of time, which kind of stifled some of my plans, but hopefully we're coming through that now.
Well, we are, and we'll come on to that, because I think strangely it created opportunities for growth in others, or certainly developments and new ways of doing things, which we will talk about. I mean, Somerset has a long and proud tradition. I think it's 147 years. Are you still now able to be growing membership and value for what members get? Do you feel that Somerset's doing a good job in that area?
Well, it's I think we've got a phenomenal membership. We've got 6,000 members, which I think pound for pound is the best in the country, the highest in the country. We don't have international tickets to leverage membership on the back of. We're as good as we are as a club and a county club, and we get tremendous support from our membership. It's difficult for me to answer the question directly because I started a week before lockdown. 2020, well, we all know, was kind of non-existent. 2021 was kind of a hybrid season coming back after, in sort of restriction place. This year, we're thrilled with where we've got to on membership. We're somewhere between our 2019 number and our 2021 number, which is where we would have taken that. We weren't quite sure how how it would all come back. But we're very, very pleased. What's the ceiling for membership? That's a very good question. I think that we've got more potential. There are 9 million people drive through Somerset each summer, by the way, to get to Devon and Cornwall mainly on holiday. And do we tap into those people? Have we got opportunities to capture them in some way? Who knows? And that's work that's ongoing and will remain ongoing. All we do know is if we can provide the best facilities with a really great experience, that more people will come. We know that, so that's what we're going to focus on.
Well, it leads me on to another thing, really, is that how important Somerset is to the Southwest as a region as a whole. I mean, you mentioned that membership base. I mean, sure, you could look at Surrey. I think I've just touched 15,000, but that's a very different catchment area in a very different environment. And in, as you rightly said, a test match ground. Is it a challenge somehow to sort of balance the needs of your current membership base, perhaps with a more traditional orientation, and still find new ways to attract a younger and a more diverse audience?
I think it's a great question, Tony. I think it's the biggest challenge we have as a sport, not just Somerset, but as a sport. Cricket's a very broad church. And I remember in my old job, I used to get a letter one week from someone saying, why are we not playing red ball cricket in July, August? And then the next day I'd get something from a parent saying, my son wants to come and watch cricket in the summer holiday. He wants to watch T20. So we've got to, that's the challenge the game has now. And when you look at the number of issues that have come through the game in the last year or two, the majority, not all, but the majority are caused by, we haven't quite found the balance between white and red ball cricket yet. It's when that balance tips in one direction that you have a problem. So if you go back to 2015, we got absolutely annihilated in the World Cup. Andrew Strauss came in, focused on white ball cricket, and hey, sometimes we underestimate what a magnificent job he and colleagues did.
Well, a World Cup everyone was going to point at, quite rightly too.
Yeah, and what a magnificent performance. I mean, that is we have got a fantastic white one-day team. Fantastic. One of the best ever, I would say, anywhere in the world. So we shouldn't underestimate that. But getting the balance then, that has unintended consequences, because if you focus too much on that, the scales tip too far and red ball suffers. And that's obviously something the game now is focusing on to try and get right.
Well, I was looking at your chairman's 2020 report. There isn't one yet, I don't think, for 2021. At least I haven't found it in my research. He said this has been an extraordinary year, which you, of course, alluded to. And one that has by necessity shifted our short-term focus. However, we remain committed to one overarching objective: ensuring the long-term future success of Somerset County Cricket Club. Are you feeling now that Somerset are able to move to that longer term focus? And if so, what for you are the key building blocks of that?
Good question. Are we able to move? What we're doing now, so I look at this over a 5-year period. So we had 2020 and 21, which really was survival. Batten down the hatches, get your costs down, make sure Somerset County Cricket Club's here for another 146 years. That was the focus. And I think sometimes it's underestimated the challenges we had. We, as in every first-class county, we were very lucky to get the support of the ECB financially. They continued to pay on time every month. My word, I hate to think what would happen if they hadn't. So that was good. But what we did, I mean, we were a £7 million a year business, if I can use that word, because that's what we are, a small business. We were £7 million. Now, over the 2 years, 20 and 2021, our income was down 4.5 million. That is a big chunk of money, over that period of time.
That's about a 60% if you're giving me those numbers. We'll based on those.
Big chunk. So, no, sorry, the 4.5 was over 2 years, 20.
Okay, sorry.
But still a heck of a chunk. To answer your question, 2020, 2021, for me, survival. 2022 is transition back to a thriving environment in 23 onwards, from 23 onwards, 23 to 24. So survive, transition, thrive. And it's very difficult. It's very difficult.
Almost government-like 3-word answer, which I quite like.
Yeah,
survive, transition, survive.
What we're doing this year is rebuilding some of the foundations that have been damaged by COVID. And whether that's facilities in the ground, we're investing money in the ground now to get it back up to standard. We've done nothing for 2 years for obvious reasons. We haven't any money. So we're investing in that. We're investing in people because we had to make some painful decisions around people during COVID. So we're using this year to transition and build the platform to really grow from 23, 24. And your point about relevance is key, is that so often in cricket, we talk about what we do, not why we do it. We constantly talk about what should be in place, whether it should be four-day cricket in the summer, or white ball, a balance, or we talk about what. The reason we exist, in my mind, as a first-class county, is to inspire the population of the Southwest to participate in cricket. Now, that might be participating by coming and watching Somerset, being excited by Somerset. It might be picking up a bat and ball at the age of 5, be it a boy or a girl. It might be becoming a coach. It might be becoming an umpire or a scorer or a volunteer at a club. It's critical that we inspire, because if we don't, if we are successful and we win trophies and the rest of the game is shrinking, then the reality is the only question is, when's the funeral? Because if the game shrinks, Somerset County Cricket shrinks. So the reason we exist is to inspire the population of the Southwest to participate in the game so the game grows, which is why we work very, very closely with the Somerset Cricket Foundation and are working increasingly closely with our neighbours in Dorset, Devon, Cornwall, who do a fantastic job for the game in their counties. And so that's why we exist, and that's what gets me up in the morning, is to be able to do that. And being competitive on the field, having world-class players as a showcase to inspire people is critical to us.
Well, that's one of the things I was going to ask about. I mean, you've touched on pathways, and I would kind of like to come back to that. But as I look in from the outside, and as an occasional visitor to the county ground, I've always enjoyed it. By the way, we haven't always won there. In fact, I think very rarely I'm a Middlesex man. If you're still talking to me, it can be a feisty crowd, particularly if Middlesex are in town, or maybe I'm just oversensitive. But it's a very passionate and as I said, loyal one. But there does seem to be the one thing I absolutely notice. It seems to have a very strong club and social vibe to it. It's possibly the makeup of the ground. It's that interesting sort of mix of sizes and shapes. It's not a uniform basin of a stadium, is it? It itself has great character. It's got a beautiful pub next door. It's right in the middle of the town. You sort of sense you're walking into a family environment when you come in. How are you really going about, taking that what feels like to me sort of essence of Somerset, and really sort of taking it out into the community? Well,
I think your point about passionate crowd is absolutely right. Reminds me a bit of Durham in a way, in that Durham had a kind of northeast identity. I think Somerset has a very southwest identity, and it feels like that's a very strong identity, which perhaps is different from some other counties across the country, just purely because of our geographical location. That's an opportunity to excite and unite people around that identity. We've invested a lot in our social media. And we felt that was very, very important during lockdown, that we retained a connection with our public, and to ensure that they've still felt part of the club. A small plug, we won the YouTube Sports Channel of the Year award last year. Fended off Manchester City, the Premier League, ATP, and all the rest of it on the shortlist. And that was due to the efforts of Ben Warren.
That's the Emirates royal family you've beaten off there. It's not just one football club.
Yeah, no, exactly. Ben Warren, Dan Cooper did a magnificent job in leading our production on that, and really spent a huge amount of time getting that better and better and better and better. And that was great. So that was a really important way to connect, and actually remains a really important way to connect. It won't go away because COVID hopefully is going away. It remains that. So that connection is important. And also your point about younger people. That's how people consume, as the marketeers would tell you, consume content these days is on social media. It's so important that if we're to remain relevant for that younger population, we need to be really, really strong in that area.
Yeah, well, one statistic I read, and it was actually about Somerset, was when you look at the growth in your broadcast of, when people couldn't get to games, your match streaming, not only did it achieve terrific volume, but as is the case with the internet, it expanded quite dramatically the age range of the people that were experiencing, the chance to watch Somerset. Which in a way is, if you're looking for the silver lining to the darker cloud,
absolutely.
There I guess was one, wasn't there?
Yeah, 100%.
Do you think, and you touched on it a wee bit when you sort of likened yourself to Durham, although you've got one fundamental difference with Durham, apart from two. One is that the Durham's are privately owned, I think, but a non-test match ground. Does that mean, particularly at the moment, you as a club, you have to kind of work twice as hard? If you fear perhaps the game is moving a little bit towards some consolidation, there an onus on Somerset to do work even harder?
Yeah, I felt for some time, Tony, that there's a very big difference between a venue and a club. And I think sometimes cricket gets that confused, or the cricketing public gets that confused. The thing that makes a big club isn't the number of seats that you've got in your ground. It's your reach. It's how many people you reach. Now, our population, if you take Cornwall, Devon, Dorset, and Somerset, is 3.6 million. Now, we reckon that's the fourth biggest in the country. So we reckon we're the fourth biggest county club in the country because that's our reach and that's our opportunity. We've got a relatively small venue, and that's the footprint we've got, and we've no ambition to change that at all. So our reach is significant, and therefore our opportunity is significant. What we need as a club is the opportunity to showcase world-class cricketers on the field at peak times of the year, and that's the risk to us now. Is that having the growth in overseas domestic competitions, which is just huge in terms of the growth, and players going to IPL and getting bigger, and it's bigger and bigger. And also the fact we've not got international cricket, we've not got the 100. Our risk is that we don't get the ability to showcase world-class cricketers on our stage in Taunton, so that the public can be inspired by them. That's our risk. It's not the actual reach that we've got, it's the risk. And that's something that we're talking to ECB about, is how we overcome those challenges that the game has. And a lot of discussion going on in the last recent months about what the domestic schedule looks like, how that moves forward, when red ball cricket's played, when the 100 dovetails with the blast and all that sort of stuff. And we're actively engaged in those discussions, but that's our one requirement. I don't think that's really optional. We absolutely need to have world-class cricketers in one currency or the other taking the field at Taunton on a regular basis.
Yeah, it was Jonathan Agnew, I think, who had was one of the voices, Kevin Peterson being another, sort of espousing a kind of a franchise system for first-class cricket. In the idea that less teams would play a better quality of cricket. And when I spoke with Sean Jarvis, I was going, well, how does that make you feel when you're when he's a man of Leicestershire? Leicestershire made his career, but I struggle to buy the argument that less will mean better quality. I think the structure is there. If you allow it to flourish, then the quality itself will grow. If you play at the right times, if you bring in money because you promote it so well that more people watch it, then the quality itself will increase. I don't buy the reduction equals increasing quality argument. How would you sort of talk about that?
Yeah, well, I mean, and I've always thought this. I think there's a lot of. I mean, the question I got asked in my old job more than any was, "We've got too many counties," and the way I always answered it was that I think we need as many good counties as we can get, and if that's 24, it should be 24. If it's 8, it should be 8. 16 should be 16. 18 should be 18. It's however many good ones. You can't have enough good counties, who are delivering value for the game, and I think that's the important bit. Is how do we ensure that the money that the game is investing in cricket generally is well invested and that gets a return for the game? Because it's not ECB's money, it's cricket's money. Mm-hmm. And we've got to make sure, and every effort's got to be made to ensure that cricket's money gets a return, whether it be on the England teams, and whether it be on women's cricket, whether it be on disabilities cricket, whether it be on first-class counties or county boards and foundations. We've just got to, I think we've all got an obligation to ensure, as tenants of this game, we're only tenants, we're passing through, that we make sure that we deliver value in return for cricket's investment in us. And I think that's where the counties have a responsibility. I certainly feel that responsibility, that we've got to make sure that Somerset delivers value, not just for ourselves, but for the game as a whole. And then from that, you get your number. So I think the numbers are red herring. It's how we can make sure and help counties deliver value for the money they get.
Well, that's a terrific sentiment. Let's sort of zoom in perhaps on 3 areas, some of which we've sort of touched on a wee bit. We talked a little bit about expanding the fan base, but the future of the game is not people my age, sadly, passionate as I am about the game. It is about both a younger and more diverse fan base. Now, one thing I did notice with Somerset, you have quite a range of membership options. It took me a while to digest them, but I did notice that there were some attractive options for very keenly priced options indeed for younger supporters. Do you have a kind of a target in mind for how many younger people you want to bring towards the county?
I think I'd just challenge the premise of what you've said, in that we rightly focus on, can we get more young people into the game? And of course that's important. That's tomorrow's bread and butter, if you like. But it's not all about young people. If cricket's going to be a game for everyone, there has to be a diet that suits people of all ages, whether they're 90 or whether they're 5. And that's really important. And I think we sometimes get obsessed with one particular grouping and inspiring that grouping. I think it's broader than that. And I think that's really important premise it's a really important principle to agree, because that drives decision making. Now, the other thing we don't know, and this is a thing, Tony, that's never been debated much, is when you're young, your parents hate pop music, yeah? They hate it. They complain that you've got it on and all the rest of it. I think
I could safely vouch for that being true.
Yeah.
From my recollections.
At one point, they loved it.
Yeah.
And what happens as they go through their life is their tastes change. Now, who's to say that the T20 fan of today won't like 4-day cricket in 30 years' time? Who knows? We don't know. We've assumed they won't. And I think that there's been some justification for assuming, but not complete, in that the thing that's changed cricket more than anything is short form cricket appeals to young people who now live in an instant society. And they want offerings in short windows. They may or may not do in the future when they get older. So I don't think we should assume that is. So we need to have an appeal, an offering for young people to inspire them to get involved. And in my case, a successful Somerset team is really, really important in that. There'll be a link between Somerset being successful and competitive and participation, in my view, because it excites people.
Yeah.
We had a quarter-final Vitality Blast game last summer against Lancashire. It was a phenomenal game, and the place was rocking. There will be kids going away from that, and people of our age and above going away. I'll never forget that night. And it inspires them to come back again. It inspires them to go to their local club and fall in love with cricket, as the 2005 Ashes did for so many people, as the Richards, Garner, Botham era did for so many people. So it's really important that we continue to have an offer that appeals to all shapes and sizes and age groups, in my view.
Well, it's sort of a broad church, and I'm delighted to hear you say that. Can we talk a little bit about pathways? Because again, one of the challenges is bringing a broader mix of players into the professional game, and that involves some of the things you talked about from a community aspect. It's reaching out into that broad community and clubs and making them feel part of the county, and making sure that those players transition and come into the to be tomorrow's, well, hopefully test players. What are some of the things you're doing in that area to broaden that net? Well,
I think, there's been a lot of talk about equity, diversity and inclusion. In fact, I'm sitting here in a hotel room in Birmingham on a 2-day inclusivity conference, trying to learn about this very topic, which is really interesting. For me, discrimination is more than just race. It's a much broader topic than that. There's been a lot of focus on race in the last few months, obviously, for obvious reasons. But for me, it's about gender balance. It's about sexuality. It's about making sure that everyone feels that they're welcome. And someone explained to me once the difference between diversity and inclusivity. Diversity being invited to the party, inclusivity is being invited to dance. And they're very different things. When you think about that, it's true. Do I feel comfortable? Do I feel accepted? Do I feel that this is a place for me? And that's really important, that we learn about what obstacles exist for people from all sorts of different backgrounds. Why do they feel comfortable? Why do they feel comfortable? Why do they feel uncomfortable? And break down those barriers. And I think there's been a lot of talk in recent months about the need to address it, which is absolutely right. But at the same time, we need to start moving to solutions and how we and it won't change overnight. It just won't change overnight. It will take time, education, removing unconscious bias, changing the way we operate things, not being frightened to change. So the pathway is one of those things. And what we're doing now is we've incredibly fortunate to have acquired on the Somerset Cricket Foundation trustees a gentleman called Habib Naqvi, who is a leading EDI specialist within the NHS. Mm-hmm. And he is leading our work on an action plan to focus on change, one of which is the pathway. It's a really important one for us, making sure that the pathway is free, that it's fluid, that it allows everybody to come through. Our population, our ethnically diverse population is 2.1% at the last census. So it's not huge, but it's important. And the other elements of inclusivity are very, very important as well. And we're doing a lot of work on that. We don't know all the answers yet. I don't think anyone does, it is the truth. But what's important is the discussions are being had. We're changing some of the ways that we're operating. For instance, when we have a job vacancy now, it's an anonymous application. So we don't know your name when you apply, so that removes any unconscious bias from that application. So we're doing lots of things, and the action plan, which will be out in April, will have full details on that.
Well, I shall hopefully chat to you again when that is out, because I'd
actually
like to hear about that.
A point to say on this, Tony, is it's not just the right human thing to do, which of course it is. It's the right business thing to do. If you're discriminating against a third of your society or whatever it is, that's crazy. It's not the right business thing. It's right from every angle. So we're excited by that.
And consider the playing talent and the breadth and depth of potential playing talent that could be brought into the game, not just from a fan, but also a playing perspective. Let me just touch a little bit on the 100. When Somerset is kind of lumped together with as a sort of a triumvirate with Glamorgan and Gloucestershire, and it becomes it was the Western team the Welsh Fire. Is that was a tough thing, I think, for many Somerset fans to take? How when they say to you that doesn't feel right to me, how do you sort of answer that when they say
they
that?
don't normally put it as politely as that, I would have to say. I think that understandably the Southwest feels a bit excluded from this show, and we've got a problem with that. You know, there is definitely a problem, probably here and in the northeast as well. I know Tim Bostock at Durham feels the same, which is an issue, because and that's something we need to address. I think it comes back to the previous point about having world-class cricketers on the stage. I'm open to what currency that is, but it's
currency,
important.
you mean format, I guess.
Yeah, whatever. I just need to have the modern day Viv Richards, Joe Garners, Ian Bothams on the stage at good times so people can come and be inspired by them. That's what I need. And there ain't too many of them around, but that's what we need. So I think it's linked to that. I think the 100 itself, look, it's emotional for a number of people. It is putting at risk in a number of people's eyes something they've treasured for 146 years, which is Somerset. I believe we can have a strong Somerset working alongside it, but I believe that we need to get the balance of the schedule right so that we can have the opportunity to be competitive as a county and build on our history. We're not finished yet. We've still got something to win, and go from there. So I think we've got to try and get the balance, but that needs the whole game to look at that rather than just Somerset.
Perfect. Well, Gordon, I'm conscious of your time because I know you're at a conference and I guess you've got something there to go to. But so let's. You've kind of led me on to scheduling, which I was going to ask you about. Actually, that a lot of people, rightly or wrongly, draw a direct connection between England's Test team's disappointing results and the timing and structure of the county game. Do you think that the structure for 2022, the 10 and 8, and the slight improvement in July, but still pretty fallow August, do you think that is going far enough to ultimately give players a chance to improve, or is it just a first step in that direction?
Well, it's really interesting, isn't it, that whenever we have an Ashes humiliation,
which are fairly regular, particularly away. Yeah,
everything comes on the table, and every problem the game's ever had surfaces for debate, which is it's a good thing, I think. I think it's the silver lining of the Ashes debacle will be that the discussions will take place about how to get better. If we'd won 2-1 or something, then these discussions wouldn't happen, but the problems would still be there.
Yeah.
So I think it's never. But people tend to say it's one issue. It's the schedule, or it's the England management, or it's the captain, or it's never one issue. It's at least half a dozen, and some of those issues weren't helped by COVID, particularly in terms of preparation time. But it is obvious that if we have 4-day cricket being played when it is now, it's not easy to be a top order batsman.
No.
Everyone knows that. It's not easy to be a spinner. Everyone knows that. So I don't think it goes far enough. I think it's an improvement. But the high performance review that Andrew Strauss is leading is a really important piece of work to make sure that we put in place sustainable changes that will allow the game and the 4-day game to be improved. At the same time, and make the point I started with, is not tipping the balance too far in favour so that we have a weak white ball set up. We need both, and it's that optimal balance that's got to be the ambition.
Well, yeah, and amen to that. So I'm going to ask you one more question. You've actually sort of answered it possibly, but I'm going to ask it anyway. If you could have one wish for Somerset looking to the next 5 years, what would that be? If you're 5 years time from now,
win the championship this year. That was easy.
I'm glad you said that, not me. But
I'd love to win the championship this year. You've no idea. I think it would give so many people joy.
Was it 6 times runners-up in the 2000s?
5, 4 in the last 6 years. Runners-up leagues, right?
Yeah.
So look, that's obviously a short term. We just want to get that done. and I'm a Hibs fan, football, and Hibs didn't win the Scottish Cup for 114 years, and I was there when we won it. And believe me, geez, what a difference! And I think about the same. I'd love for that to happen, for the Championship to be won. In 5 years' time, we've got our 150th anniversary in 2025, so that's something to look forward to. And what I would like more than anything for Somerset is for it to be continuing to be a competitive county in its own right, to be staging high-profile matches which allow us to field world-class players, showcase world-class players on the stage at Taunton, and to be a strong contributor to the growth of the game in England and Wales. That is
test this year, which is very encouraging.
Women's test, and when I say a strong contributor, I mean the number of people picking up a bat and ball, the club structure being strong, the number of people watching it on live, the number of people following it on social media and all that sort of stuff. I just want it to be really strong against anyone, be right up there, be best in class, if you like, and making that contribution and exciting people through what we offer.
Well, as a Middlesex man, even I would wish you well in that, I've got to say. Not at our expense, but generally, a healthy Somerset is healthy for cricket, in my opinion. So it's been an absolute pleasure to sort of absorb some of your, clarity of thinking, but also, passion for doing the right thing for Somerset. So, Gordon Hollins, thank you very much.
Thanks, Tony, and thanks for what you guys are doing for cricket, but through the promotion of it.
That's a really great pleasure.
Revolutionary cricket commentary.